Welcome to the Root Cause Revolution podcast with functional and integrative nurse nutritionist and energy medicine practitioner, Audrey Christie.
Hey friend, welcome to episode 211 of the Root Cause Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Audrey Christie, and I thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're talking how to heal adrenal fatigue. I put a post on Instagram just recently about a quick way to tell if you have adrenal fatigue. Now, this is not a lab test. It is absolutely not the end-all be-all, but a quick, simple way to tell if you likely are suffering from adrenal fatigue is to go outside on a sunny day and see if you squint. Are you squinting like, oh my gosh, I need my sunnies, where are my sunglasses? Then you are likely suffering from adrenal fatigue. Now, I'm not recommending you go stare straight up into the sun at noon. That would be foolish, but just go outside. Do your hands come up to your eyes like, whoo, it's stinking bright out here? Or can you open your eyes and relax and see around you? If you're squinting, you might be suffering from adrenal fatigue, and it's worth looking into further. It's worth looking into for so many reasons. We're going to dive into those today. But for my ladies who are perimenopausal and menopausal, and you're struggling with hormone balance, and you're wondering if you should do bioidentical hormones, you shouldn't. We'll talk about that later. But you're wondering about all these things, then you want your adrenals to be functioning. If they're not functioning and you are menopausal, then your hormones are out of whack. As you go into menopause and become postmenopausal, that is when your adrenals should kick over and take up some, not all, of the hormone production that your sex organs were doing before. And I'm going to get way off into a tangent with this, but I just want you to know that it's super, super, super important. Okay? All right. So needless to say, adrenal fatigue has been top of mind lately. It is constantly talked about in holistic health. Meanwhile, much of conventional medicine says that adrenal fatigue isn't real, which is always an interesting balance, right? But adrenal fatigue and kind of the surrounding picture of trouble and symptoms leads to things like autoimmune disease, diabetes, weight gain, anxiety, hormone imbalance, depression, lack of motivation, low willpower, immune system troubles, such as like getting sick more often, or even, leading to autoimmune issues. It leads to big thyroid troubles, reproductive trouble, like polycystic ovarian disease, endometriosis, fibroids, all of those things. But when you follow adrenal fatigue down to the root, the adrenals touch all the body systems. So we're going to talk about today. So what are adrenal glands? Well, I like to think of it, and I have all these weird little memory aids from back when I was in school, when I was in conventional nursing school. But the adrenals, they're on top of your kidneys. Your kidneys are part of your renal system, and adrenals, you add them to the kidneys. So that was my little way of remembering it. But kind of around the lower middle of your back, you have two bean-shaped fist-sized organs on either side of your spine. And those aren't your adrenals, those are your kidneys. But on top of each of those kidneys are these little bitty power packs that help your body to adapt to stress and to maintain your physical energy levels, right? So if you look at it from an energetic perspective, if we step out of the physical and into the subtle energy, energetically, this is also where the solar plexus chakra is, which is kind of the seat of your personal power. It works in conjunction with the kidney meridian. The kidney meridian is the wellspring of your body, of energy, right? It's also the energetic filtering system for the body, much like your kidneys are for your physical human suit. You connecting the dots with me here? So anytime there is energy stuck in the body, the kidney meridian is something you want to flush out. You want to flush it out to clear it, to revitalize and renew both the the energetics, if you will, and the physical kidneys. In energy medicine, the kidney meridian is the life force meridian. That's the word I was looking for earlier. the meridian of beginnings and renewals. So these little adrenal glands are super, super important, and they serve to produce very powerful chemical messengers in your body. They control your fight or flight mechanism, your stress reactions. And in particular, one very important and very moody chemical messenger, cortisol. Now, it's kind of funny. The first time I ever heard of cortisol, it was like an infomercial. I remember we lived in East Texas, and it was our first house. I lived in that house all the way up until 4th or 5th grade. And my parents, I would go to bed and I didn't have a TV in my room, but we had like a TV in the living room, and my parents had a TV in their bedroom. But my parents were watching TV, and the late night commercial would come on, and it was a supplement to block cortisol. And I remember hearing the commercial or seeing the commercial. And so what I used to do, sorry, Mom, if you're listening, is my parents would watch TV at night, and I would come peek around the corner, and I could see the TV, and they couldn't see me because their chairs didn't face that way. So I thought I was being sneaky. Maybe I will hear later that I wasn't so sneaky, but I remember seeing this commercial about cortisol and belly fat and this supplement, right? And so you may also have a similar memory, maybe not sneaking around to see late night TV, but a similar memory of what you know about cortisol or what you've heard about cortisol. So it gets a really bad name is the point of all that. People, these commercials started in the late 80s, early 90s, all the way up to the early 2000s. And it scared people about how cortisol was going to give them a spare tire that would ultimately lead to their death, right? The good news is like most things naturally created in our body, cortisol is not that scary. It is super important, but it's not scary. In fact, it's absolutely necessary. It is a chemical messenger that helps to regulate our daily energy needs. So it ramps us up in the morning to help wake us up, and then it gradually declines throughout the day. So cortisol also spikes during times of physical or mental stress. It spikes to give the body what it needs to cope with a perceived stressor. So as you can imagine, a few hundred years ago, this would be super helpful, right? I like to give the example of imagine yourself walking down a forest path on a piece of land that will someday become Texas, and a jaguar, not the luxury vehicle, but like an actual big cat jaguar steps out into your path. Now your brain will send an instant message to your adrenals to fire off cortisol, to give you a surge of energy to run or fight. Neither of which might work with the jaguar, right? But cortisol triggers many other chemical messengers in your brain. They do things like, I like to call it a chemical cascade. It stops digestion. It sends extra blood and oxygen to the muscles. It sharpens your vision. And it has all of these little self-defense functions. You become a tiny little superhero ready to run or fight the jaguar, which seems like it would be very helpful, right? But it also reacts to perceived stressors. So to your mind, seeing a jaguar and being afraid like there's a jaguar or imagining a jaguar create the exact same response. So picture this scenario instead. You're driving on the interstate. If you live in the DFW Metroplex like I do, you're on 35, okay? You're on 35, traffic's bumper to bumper, and some idiot cuts you off, causes you to slam on your brakes, spill your iced tea all over the center console and seat, and guess what happens? Your brain sends an instant message to your adrenals to produce cortisol, to give you the energy to run or fight, to trigger the chemical messengers, that chemical cascade in your brain to stop digestion, send extra blood and oxygen to the muscles, to sharpen your vision, and to start all the self-defense functions. Useful? No, probably not, right? So how many times does this happen to you? Option 2, that is. I realize we're not running from jaguars in the Texas wilderness, right? Option 2 probably happens a lot. It happens when you have an email from your boss. It happens when your kids are running late and you're yelling, get in the car, we got to get to school, right? It happens when your kids aren't listening and you're like, if you would just listen to me. It happens when you're grocery shopping and like people are just constantly in your way or you're running late. It happens all the time. And so it probably even happens when you're arguing with somebody. So what's the problem then? Well, the problem is that we are under a perceived threat all the time unless you're taking steps to stop it. Now, it depends on who you ask. Like I said, conventional medicine says adrenal fatigue is not real. So the reason they say that is because there are there is a spectrum of adrenal fatigue, just like everything else. It's a dial, right? And so on one end, you have no adrenal function. And on the other end, you have such high adrenal function that you require, in conventional medicine's mind, you require medication on either end. There's a whole span of symptoms in the middle that cause a ton of problems, but it's considered subclinical, to use a conventional medicine term. So what I want you to know is that regardless of whether you meet that threshold on either end of the dial as being diagnosable, it is a real phenomenon. And it's not necessarily that our adrenals are malfunctioning. We have to back it up to the system, the root, the system that precedes the adrenal function, right? And if you think back to my example, what happened first? The brain sends a message to the adrenals. So we have to go back to the brain and find out what's causing it. And frankly, we may need to back it up even further than that. I've had clients tell me that when they approach their family doctors with the typical symptoms of adrenal fatigue and tiredness and trouble getting to sleep and trouble waking up, trouble staying to sleep, craving salt, craving sugar, unexplained weight loss or weight gain, reliance on caffeine, and then all of these nonspecific digestion problems, they're often told, get used to it. It happens with aging, sent to a specialist of some sort, or worst case, given an antidepressant. And here's the thing. We know that conventional medicine is really, really good at extremes, right? Even extremes can be healed naturally, but oftentimes we need conventional medicine's help to band-aid whatever's happening with medication or surgery, especially in urgent cases. But we know that conventional medicine will say it's not curable if it can't be medicated or surgically removed, right? So in the functional and integrative world, we know that it's that spectrum, right? What I was saying, in between the dials, that can be addressed and reduced and healed. Even in the holistic practitioners, the functional practitioners, the health coaches, they see signs of adrenal symptoms and they think, okay, I need to fix the adrenals, right? And while that's not necessarily wrong, oftentimes we do have to support the adrenals while we're chasing it back and healing it at the root. It's the very same approach as conventional medicine. When you just address the adrenals, you're missing the big picture, the other things, the roots like stress, trauma, lifestyle issues, nutritional deficiencies, toxins, blood sugar imbalances, and so much more. You aren't really addressing the problem when you're just taking some adrenals and some minerals, right? So let's talk about how to look at it from the root, or how to treat it from the root. The very best thing, and everybody's roots are different. And so I want to make sure that you understand that. Even if you have two identical, genetically the same people, twins, identical twins, and they have the same diagnosis, they have different root causes, at least some of them, because they had different experiences that led them to this. Even if they grew up in the same house, right? Somewhere along the line, they had different experiences. Sally likes vegetables, Susie liked fruit. There's something in the difference. Sally got exposed to XYZ viruses or chemicals or toxins. Susie, not so much. She did other things, right? So the one thing that tends to help every single person is stress reduction. But how in the heck do you do that in a society that is so stressful, right? It's for sure not as simple as just being like, you should reduce your stress. Now, as with most things, the most effective strategy is a multi-pronged approach, right? Reducing your physical, mental, and energetic stress through meditation, nutrition, movement, supplements, sometimes extra things like essential oils. So I want to give you some quick tips on how you can get some quick results, but know that it's just a piece of the puzzle. And we'll probably have another episode soon on maintaining healthy adrenal function. And if you want to dive deeper, I will go into bonus information, recipe type information, how-to information, things that I can only really do in a video format in the Wellness Circle, my free private Facebook group. You can find that at audreychristie.com/Facebook. Also, anything that I mentioned today, supplements, the Root Cause Revolution membership, all of those links, even the Wellness Circle, can be found at audreychristie.com/211. That's audreychristie.com/211. It'll have all the show notes right there for you. All right. So the first one, meditation. I have been preaching meditation for what feels like a million years, and I will continue to preach it. And I love that science is catching up. They're doing studies. There are so many studies. You can go to Google Scholar. You can go to PubMed, type in meditation. There are so many studies on the benefits of meditation. It is the number one best thing that you can do to change your health. And it's absolutely free. It's easy. It's free. It requires no supplies, right? It is the single best remedy to stress. There's just no match. Studies show it works better than any pill, patch, or exercise. Okay. So I want to do that, to tell you that first. You can, of course, enhance meditation with some things. I like to use things in my meditations like crystals or mantras or essential oils or mudras, holding my hands in particular positions. You can enhance meditation, but all that's needed is you. You don't even need a quiet environment. If you're not on my newsletter list, jump on today. I'll send out my meditation guide in the newsletter this week. And I can attach it again next week, depending on when you're looking at it. It's also in the files of the Wellness Circle, so you can find it there as well. Number 2, the second thing you can do is energy medicine. Now, in conjunction with your meditation practice, there are some short energy medicine routines that you can incorporate. This is low-hanging fruit, just like meditation. It helps to address the root cause of your adrenal fatigue instead of hiding it with supplements or meditations. So I just want you to try this real quick. Again, I'll be demonstrating this and some other things in the Wellness Circle in the kind of the add-on bonus information for this episode. So when you feel tired, fatigued, run down, sometimes it's because your energies are flipped in your body. It could be polarity. It could be your K27 points. So one easy solution is to take your 3 fingers, like you're signing a bird beak. So your first finger, your middle finger, and your thumb, and put them together like you're going to peck somebody with those beaks, right? And so what you're going to do is just find the inside corners of your collarbone and then go down a couple fingers with. You'll find a little indentation. That is K27. Give it a really good peck with those 3 fingers. And I'm doing it now, so you might hear a little change in the vibration of my voice. Give it a really good peck with these 3 fingers or massage it a few times to flip the energies in their proper direction. You'll notice things like a little boost of energy, increase in focus, right? Additionally, you can do things like flush the kidney meridian, which we'll talk about that in the Facebook group. And that's another really effective technique. You can also adjust your polarity, which I recommend doing anytime you get in a car or you're in an area with tons of EMF without protection, all of those things. And we'll go over that in the Facebook group as well. Now, essential oils can really help with adrenal fatigue. I hesitate to mention them. They aren't the lock and key to fixing adrenal fatigue. And so a lot of people they're really proud of their essential oils and they want to say, this is all you need, right? But if you want to supplement topically, aromatically, your healing process for your adrenal fatigue, then you can use some things like basil essential oil, grapefruit essential oil, or rosemary essential oil. They're really powerful together or standalone. You can put them in your diffuser. You can rub them on the bottom of your feet. I recommend testing the oils yourself to determine which ones you need. So if you don't know how to do that, then it's just a simple muscle test, and I'll go over that in the Facebook group as well. And alternatively, you could just use equal drops of each. So people always ask, well, Audrey, why are these 3 strategies? There's about 8 billion different adrenal supplements that are on the market. So why these 3 things? Well, I'd like to recommend these 3 things to the masses because they're cheap, free, or easy, or all 3. Okay. And because supplements for adrenal health really require some fine tuning. Just like anything else, all of us are bio-individual. We're all 100% unique, even if you're an identical twin, right? And so what works for Sally, we're going to use the same names. It had to take me a minute. What works for Sally may not work for Susie. What works for your neighbor might not work for you. What works for your spouse or your partner might not work for you, and vice versa. So using strategies like this that anyone can apply will help you to heal. These are they're not just, airy-fairy strategies. These are some of the most effective strategies in healing your adrenal fatigue. Okay? And then the last part, that isn't by any means the least part, is nutrition, right? We know that you can't out-supplement poor nutrition. You might be able to for like a brief period of time, but it's not going to pan out well. It's not going to work in the long run. Supplements are really good at turning nutrient deficiencies into sufficiencies in a hurry, but they're not a long-term solution, nor are they a cost-effective way to manage your health long-term. So the best way to think of your nutrition here, instead of thinking of things you can't have, which I'm happy to tell you the things that I don't think you should be eating, but for this purpose, I want you to think about adding all the plants that you can. Not necessarily fruits. I want you to have fruits. You can have fruits primarily in the spring and summer, but I want you to focus on all the veggies that you can possibly eat and all the good healthy fats that you can possibly have. Right? Statistically, we know we need a minimum of 30 different plants in our body in order to have the absolute best gut health. There's no pill or powder that fixes that, period. Even the most expensive probiotics don't fix that. Okay? All right. So even though nutrition was number 4 of the things that I listed, it does definitely matter. The gut is actually your brain. There's a whole axis that goes from your gut to your brain. And so I want to make sure that you are working through those. Okay. Now, we'll be talking about some more strategies in the Facebook group. I have crossed over the barrier of the length of time for this episode, and I kind of knew I would. I tend to get on a soapbox about adrenals. So thank you if you're still hanging out with me for bearing with me. You can find all the show notes at audreychristie.com/211. That's audreychristie.com/211. And if you have a second, whatever platform you're listening on, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would leave a review. And that way, we have the opportunity to share this podcast with as many people as possible who might be on their healing journey. So thank you again for tuning in. I am always rooting for you, friend. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Root Cause Revolution podcast. Be sure and subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated.